My name is Callie. I'm 28 years old, and I'm the kind of person who makes lists for everything. Lists to avoid embarrassing situations. Lists for grocery shopping. Lists for my entire life. But on that Saturday night in Chicago, with one too many cups of punch in my hand in a dimly lit hallway, everything I had planned fell apart. I kissed a woman I didn't know. Or at least, that's what I thought. Because that woman, with honey-colored eyes and an irresistible smile, was exactly who I shouldn't have been kissing. And the worst part? I was about to find out who she really was, and my life would never be the same. Leave a comment telling me which city you're listening from so I can see how far this beautiful story is reaching. And take the chance to subscribe to the channel, helping me reach 2,000 subscribers. The thing about family parties in Chicago is that they're always too loud, too crowded, and somehow always happen during the worst possible weather. That Saturday in October, it was raining, the kind of rain that makes you want to stay inside with a warm drink and a good book. But instead, I was at my parents' house, surrounded by aunts, uncles, cousins, and what felt like half of the Midwest. My name is Callie Morrison, and I've spent the last 28 years perfecting the art of control. I have a color-coded calendar. I have backup plans for my backup plans. I've never been late to anything in my life. My therapist says I have control issues. I say I'm just organized. There's a difference. The party had been going on for about 2 hours when I decided I needed a break. My cousin Marcus was introducing his new girlfriend to the family. Brooke, I think her name was. I hadn't met her yet. Honestly, I wasn't really paying attention. I was too busy helping my mom set up the dessert table and making sure everything was perfect. Because that's what I do. I make sure everything is perfect. By 8 o'clock, I'd had 3 cups of punch. I know this because I was keeping track. I always keep track. But somewhere between the 3rd cup and the moment I decided to take a walk down the hallway to find the bathroom, my careful counting system failed me. The punch was stronger than I thought. Someone, probably my uncle, had spiked it with vodka. The hallway was quiet. Blessedly quiet. Away from the noise of the party, away from the chaos, away from my mother asking me to help with something else. I was walking toward the bathroom when I heard music coming from the guest bedroom. Not party music. Something softer. Something that made me pause. I shouldn't have opened that door. I know that now. But in that moment, with the punch making my thoughts fuzzy and my usual caution nowhere to be found, I did. The room was dimly lit by the glow of a lamp in the corner. And there she was. She was standing by the window, looking out at the rain, and she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She had honey-colored eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light, and her dark hair fell in waves down her back. She was wearing a deep blue dress that hugged her curves perfectly, and when she turned to look at me, she smiled, a smile that made my stomach flip in a way I hadn't experienced in years. "Hi," she said, her voice soft and warm. I needed a break from the party too. I should have said something normal. Something like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know anyone was in here." But instead, I stepped into the room and closed the door behind me. The punch was definitely affecting my judgment. "Me too," I said, and then, because I apparently had lost all sense of self-preservation, I added, "It's nice to have a moment of peace." She laughed, a genuine, warm laugh that made her whole face light up. "Tell me about it. Family parties can be a lot." We talked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. She told me about how she loved the rain, how she'd always wanted to visit Chicago, how she worked in marketing but dreamed of opening her own business someday. I told her about my job as a project manager, about my obsession with organization, about how I'd never been good at just letting go. "You seem like someone who needs to let go more," she said, and there was a teasing glint in her eye. "I do not," I protested, but I was smiling. "You absolutely do," she said, stepping closer to me. "I can tell. You're wound up so tight, I'm surprised you don't snap. And then she kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was passionate and urgent, and everything I didn't know I needed. Her hands found their way to my hair, and mine found their way to her waist. The world outside that room, the party, my family, my carefully constructed life, all of it disappeared. There was only her and me, and the feeling of her lips against mine. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. "Wow," I said, because apparently that was all my brain could manage. She laughed again, that same warm laugh. "Yeah. Wow." "I'm Callie," I said, suddenly realizing I didn't even know her name. "I'm Brooke," she said, and then she kissed me again. We were interrupted by a knock on the door. I jumped back so quickly I nearly fell over. Brooke smoothed down her dress and gave me a knowing smile. "Come in," she called out, as if we hadn't just been making out like teenagers. My cousin Marcus opened the door, and his face went through a series of expressions: confusion, surprise, and then something that looked like concern. "Brooke," he said, "there you are. I've been looking for you. I want to introduce you to everyone." That's when it hit me. That's when I realized what had just happened. Brooke was Marcus's girlfriend. The girlfriend he'd been talking about for months. The girlfriend he was introducing to the family tonight. The girlfriend I had just kissed. I felt the color drain from my face. I looked at Brooke, and she was looking at me with an expression that was somewhere between amusement and concern. "Oh," I said, because apparently that was all I could say. "Yeah," Brooke said softly, and there was something in her eyes that made my heart skip a beat. "Oh." Marcus looked between us, clearly confused. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I said quickly, too quickly. "We were just talking about the rain and Chicago and things." "Right," Brooke said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Just talking." But it wasn't just talking, and we both knew it. As Marcus led Brooke back out to the party, she turned back to look at me one last time. And in that look, I saw something that terrified me and thrilled me in equal measure. She didn't regret it, and neither did I. But I also knew that this was going to be a disaster. I spent the next hour hiding in the kitchen, pretending to help my mother with the dishes. In reality, I was having a complete and total meltdown, just a very quiet and organized one. I had kissed my cousin's girlfriend. Not just any kiss, a passionate, intense, life-altering kiss. And the worst part? I couldn't stop thinking about it, about her, about the way her hands felt in my hair, the way her lips tasted, the way she'd looked at me when we pulled apart. "Callie, are you okay?" my mother asked, handing me another plate to dry. "You've been washing that same plate for 5 minutes. "I'm fine," I lied, setting the plate down with more force than necessary. "Just tired." My mother gave me that look, the one that said she knew I was lying but wasn't going to push it. She'd perfected that look over 28 years of motherhood. I needed to get out of the kitchen. I needed to think. I needed to figure out how to undo the biggest mistake of my life. I was drying my hands when Brooke appeared in the doorway. My heart stopped. "Can we talk?" she asked, glancing at my mother. My mother, bless her, suddenly remembered that she needed to check on something in the living room. She disappeared with a knowing smile that made me want to die of embarrassment. "We shouldn't," I said immediately, even though every part of me wanted to say yes. "We should," Brooke said, stepping into the kitchen and closing the door behind her. "We definitely should." "You're dating my cousin," I said, as if she didn't already know this. "I know," she said, and she didn't sound guilty. She sounded amused. "And you're his cousin, and apparently we have chemistry." "This isn't funny," I said, but I was already moving toward her. "I'm not laughing," she said. And she wasn't. Her expression was serious, intense. "I'm just being honest. That kiss was incredible, and you know it." "It was a mistake," I said, but my voice wavered. "Was it?" she asked, stepping closer. "Because from where I'm standing, it felt like the most honest thing that's happened to me in a long time." I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to tell her that we couldn't do this, that it was wrong, that it would destroy my family. But instead, I found myself asking the question that had been burning in my mind since Marcus opened that door. "How long have you been dating Marcus?" 3 months, she said. "Why?" "And you're already kissing his cousin?" "Only because his cousin is the most interesting person I've met since moving to Chicago," she said. And there was that smile again, the one that made my knees weak. "This is insane," I said, but I didn't move away from her. "Probably," she agreed, "but I don't care." We were interrupted by my grandmother's voice from the living room. "Callie! Brooke! Where are you girls? We're about to start karaoke." Brooke and I looked at each other, and I saw the moment she made a decision. She stepped back, smoothed down her dress, and gave me a look that promised this conversation wasn't over. "We should go," she said, "before your grandmother comes looking for us." "My grandmother," I said, following her to the door, "is the nosiest person in this entire family." "I'm starting to figure that out," Brooke said. And she was right, because as we emerged from the kitchen, my grandmother, Nonna Rosa, who was 83 years old and had the eyes of a hawk, took one look at us, and her expression changed. She looked at Brooke, then at me, then back at Brooke. And then she smiled. A smile that said she knew exactly what had been happening in that kitchen. "Well, well," she said, in Italian accented English that made my blood run cold. "Isn't this interesting?" "Nonna," I said, my voice strained. "I know what you were doing," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "I was young once, too. But you be careful, Callie. That one's already spoken for." "Nonna?" I protested. She winked at me. "Don't worry, Bella. Your secret is safe with me. I won't tell anyone." Except, of course, she would. Because this was my grandmother we were talking about, and she was incapable of keeping a secret. She would probably tell everyone by the end of the night. The karaoke started 20 minutes later, and it was absolute chaos. My uncle was singing "Don't Stop Believin'" at the top of his lungs. My cousin was attempting to do a duet with his girlfriend, Brooke, while I sat on the couch, watching them together and feeling like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. It was wrong. All of it was wrong. And yet, when Brooke looked over at me during the chorus and our eyes met, I felt that same spark of electricity that I'd felt in that bedroom. This was going to be so much worse than I thought. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and the sinking realization that everything had changed. I checked my phone and found 17 messages in the family group chat. 17. That was never a good sign. I scrolled through them with growing dread. Aunt Patricia. That karaoke night was wild. Did anyone else notice the chemistry between Callie and Brooke? Uncle Tony. I thought I was imagining things, lol. My mother. Patricia, not everything is a conspiracy. Nonna Rosa. I saw what I saw. Those two were practically eye-fucking each other all night. My mother. Mom! I wanted to throw my phone out the window. Of course my grandmother had told everyone. And of course she'd used that particular phrase. I had exactly one text from Brooke. Your grandmother is amazing. We need to talk. Properly this time. Coffee? Tomorrow at 10 a.m.? There's a place called The Daily Grind on Michigan Avenue. I stared at that message for a long time. I knew what I should do. I should delete it. I should block her number. I should tell Marcus everything and beg for his forgiveness. I should do a lot of things. Instead, I texted back. Okay. The next day, I spent 3 hours deciding what to wear to a coffee date with my cousin's girlfriend. This was a new low, even for me. I finally settled on jeans and a sweater, casual enough to seem like I wasn't trying, but put together enough to seem like I had my life under control. Which I absolutely did not. The Daily Grind was a small, cozy coffee shop, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing store. It was the kind of place where people went to have important conversations. I was early, because of course I was. I ordered a coffee and sat at a small table in the corner, trying to look casual and failing miserably. Brooke arrived at exactly 10 a.m., and she looked even more beautiful than I remembered. She was wearing a cream-colored sweater and dark jeans, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She ordered a coffee and joined me at the table, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. "Hi," she said finally. "Hi," I said back. "So," she said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. "This is awkward." "Extremely," I agreed. "I need to tell you something," she said, and my heart sank. This was it. This was where she told me that the kiss was a mistake, that she was committed to Marcus, that we could never see each other again. "Okay," I said, bracing myself. "I broke up with Marcus," she said. I nearly choked on my coffee. "What?" I managed to sputter out. "Last night," she said, and she looked calm about it. "After karaoke, I told him that I didn't think we were right for each other, and that I didn't want to waste his time." "You broke up with him because of me?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "I broke up with him because I realized that I've been settling," she said, leaning forward. "I've been dating him for 3 months, and I've never felt the kind of chemistry with him that I felt with you in that bedroom. Not even close. And then you kissed me, and suddenly everything made sense." "This is insane," I said, but I was already thinking about how this changed everything. "Maybe," she said, "but it's also honest. And I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not, or pretending to feel things I don't feel. Life's too short for that." "Marcus is going to hate me," I said. "Probably," she agreed. "But that's not really our problem, is it?" "It absolutely is our problem," I said. "He's my cousin. My family is already gossiping about us, and now you've broken up with him, which is going to make it look like we planned this whole thing." "Didn't we?" she asked, and there was a challenge in her eyes. "No," I said firmly. "We didn't. I didn't even know you existed until Saturday night." "And now?" she asked. "What do you think now?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized that I was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind of trouble that couldn't be fixed with a list or a plan or any amount of organization. "I think," I said slowly, "that this is the worst possible timing, and that we're going to regret this, and that my family is going to be furious." "And?" she prompted. "And I still want to see where this goes," I admitted. She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through the clouds. "Good. Because I do too." The explosion happened exactly 3 days later, which was actually faster than I'd anticipated. I was at work. I'm a project manager for a marketing firm downtown, when my phone rang. It was Marcus. I almost didn't answer. "We need to talk," he said, and his voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. "Okay," I said, my stomach dropping. "When?" "Now, my apartment. Don't bring her." I told my boss I was sick and left work. The drive to Marcus's apartment in Pilsen took 20 minutes, and I spent every second of it trying to figure out what I was going to say. There was no good explanation. There was no way to make this okay. Marcus opened the door before I could knock. He looked terrible. like he hadn't slept in days. His usually neat apartment was a mess, with empty beer bottles on the coffee table and takeout containers scattered around. "So it's true," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "You and Brooke." "Marcus," I started. "Don't," he said, holding up his hand. "Just don't. I want to hear it from you. Everything. From the beginning." So I told him. I told him about the party, about the hallway, about the kiss in the guest bedroom. I told him about the coffee date with Brooke, about her breaking up with him, about how I felt about her. I told him everything, and with each word, I could see the hurt in his eyes growing deeper. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "I trusted you," he said finally. "You're my cousin. Your family. And you did this." "I know," I said, and I meant it. "I know it was wrong. I know it was a betrayal. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Marcus. But I can't undo it. I can't take it back." "Do you love her?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. Did I love her? I'd known her for less than a week. But when I thought about her, about the way she looked at me, the way she made me feel, I realized that I might already be halfway there. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I think I could. And I think she could love me too." "Then get out," he said, and his voice broke. "Get out of my apartment and don't come back. And don't expect me to be okay with this. Don't expect me to forgive you anytime soon." I left without another word. There was nothing else to say. It's been 6 months since that night at my parents' house. 6 months since I kissed a stranger in a dimly lit hallway and changed my entire life. Marcus and I have slowly started to repair our relationship, though it's still fragile. We had lunch last month, and while it wasn't comfortable, it was a start. He told me that he'd met someone new, someone who actually makes him happy, and I was genuinely glad for him. I think, eventually, we'll be okay. My family, on the other hand, is still divided. Nonna Rosa thinks the whole thing is the most romantic thing she's ever heard and tells the story to anyone who will listen. My mother has come around, though she still gives me lectures about thinking before I act. And my aunts and uncles are slowly accepting it, though there's still some gossip at family gatherings. But none of that matters, because Brooke and I are happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. We moved in together 3 months ago, a small apartment in Wicker Park with big windows and exposed brick. She quit her marketing job and started her own consulting business, and I've been helping her with the business planning, because of course I have. I'm still a list maker at heart. She's made me less rigid, more willing to take risks, and I've helped her build a business plan that actually works. Last week, she took me back to that guest bedroom at my parents' house. They were having another party, and we snuck away from the crowd, just like we did that first night. But this time, when we kissed, it wasn't frantic or desperate. It was slow and sure and full of promise. "Do you regret it?" she asked me, her head resting on my chest. "That first kiss? All the chaos it caused?" I thought about it, about the family drama, about the hurt I'd caused Marcus, about the gossip and the judgment. And then I thought about her, about the way my life had completely changed since that night. "Not for a second," I said, and I meant it. The thing about life is that you can plan all you want, but sometimes the best things are the ones you never see coming. Sometimes the best things happen in dimly lit hallways, with a woman who has honey-colored eyes and an irresistible smile. Sometimes the best things are the ones that terrify you and thrill you in equal measure. I'm still a list maker. I still color code my calendar. I still have backup plans for my backup plans. But now, I also have room in my life for spontaneity, for passion, for love that came out of nowhere and changed everything, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you so much for listening to Callie's story until the end. I hope it touched your heart the way it touched mine. Here's a piece of advice that Callie learned the hard way. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you can't plan for. Don't be so focused on control that you miss the magic happening right in front of you. Take the risk, kiss the stranger, fall in love. Life is too short to play it safe. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything to us. And remember, no matter where you are in the world, you're part of our community now. God bless you all, and I hope your life is filled with unexpected moments of magic, just like Callie's was.